Everybody, thanks for watching and thanks for taking the time to purchase and support. And welcome to the 11th book in the Biblical Bible series, which is First Kings, which is basically really a part of First and Second Samuel. When you understand how it was originally written, it was all one book. So they just broke it up basically 4 parts. But it's, it was called Kings, the Book of Kings. So it's all the same, really. But First Kings, we had at the end of Second Samuel. Dave's getting old, and he's at the end of his rule. He had just come out of basically having a bunch of Hebrew Israelites killed, 70,000, because he or Satan was told to number Israel. So First Chronicles I read, Satan tells him. We read in Second Samuel, it's God. But contradiction nonetheless, that's going to make sense later. We'll get into that. But it starts off with David nearing the end of his life. And he has a son, Adonijah, or Adonijah, however you want to pronounce it, who's basically trying to capture the moment and steal the throne for himself away from Solomon. So Adonijah, or Adonijah, he gets support from Joab, which remember Joab, or Joab, however you want to pronounce it, was David's commander. Joab is the one who basically was killing everybody. So Joab basically sides with Adonijah, and they conspire to steal the throne from Solomon. So Nathan, the prophet, gets wind of it. He goes and tell Bathsheba. Remember, Bathsheba is the one that was bathing, and King David saw her. She was married to Uriah, and he had a baby with her. Remember, the first baby died. The second baby was Solomon. So Adonijah, he's trying to steal the throne. They find out about it. They run to David and, tell David what's going on. So David, before he dies, he go ahead and have the whole ceremony with the priest to tell him to go ahead, hey, make sure Solomon rules, anoint Solomon as the next ruler. So Adonijah is basically like, damn. So what Solomon does, once he becomes king, he cleans house. Solomon is not playing. He kills. Remember, Joab been riding with David for a long time, the whole thing. Kills Joab and everybody else who conspired with them to kill him. Now his brother Adonijah, he spares him. He tells him, we cool, my brother. I'm not gonna kill you. Just basically chill out. Stop trying to steal the throne from me. Everything gonna be straight. So before Solomon was king, what David did, David was getting old, and of course he getting old. His wife was getting old. So. He wanted a younger wife. So he basically takes this young woman as his concubine, and she's young. She's basically there to just, make him feel good until he died. So once he's dead and Solomon is king, as I said before in 2 Samuel, when a king passes, kingdom down to another king, everything that was that king when he dies automatically goes, to the new king. Makes sense, right? He's there. He don't need it no more. So that includes his concubines. So Adonijah, who basically promised not to do anything, he sees an opportunity. And he basically goes to Bathsheba and tries to convince her. He convinces her, hey, I want to marry David's widow. He's thinking if I marry her, then the people will kind of sort of see me as the rightful ruler. And, Solomon was like, yo, dude, I told you to chill out. So when he finds out that this dude is trying to marry her to try to make himself look like he's the rightful king and have people look at him as a king because he's married to her, Solomon's like, you know what? I warned you, you're dead. Kills him. Has him killed. And this is how it begins with Solomon. Solomon cleans house, and God looks at him completely different, because one of the things Solomon does differently from everybody else, he asks God for wisdom. Like, everybody's messing up. Give me the wisdom. Forget everything else. The one thing he asks for is the wisdom so he can know how to rule. So God grants him this super wisdom that you would think would carry him, in a rightful place, but it doesn't, as you'll see. So since, Solomon, this guy's dude, he's asking for wisdom, and he's asking for what he needs to ask for to be a good servant of God. So God gives him, not only wisdom, money and everything, So Solomon basically unites everybody, kicks all of the the prostitutes and all the stuff that's going wrong in Israel out, and he kind of puts things in order. So remember, God tells David that his son will basically build his temple, and God comes to Solomon in a couple dreams and tells him, hey dude, if you basically be as good as your pop and you follow my commandments and you be good, you're going to build my temple and I'll dwell there. He comes to visit Solomon a couple times. David also tells Solomon on his deathbed right before he died, pulls Solomon over and tells Solomon, hey man, follow the commandments, lead the people straight, don't sin against God, and told him basically what to do because God ain't playing no games, he'll kill you. And Solomon's like, yeah, okay, I get it. So, God comes to the dream, tells him, Solomon has this information, he know what he needs to do, just like the rest of the guys when you really understand. But, we'll get into what happens. But first things first, we all know Solomon from Solomon's temple. And Solomon builds this temple. And when he builds the temple, he becomes famous. Solomon becomes super famous. Everybody knows Solomon. Now, supposedly this temple was built 1000 BCE, destroyed by the Babylonians in the 6th century BCE, which no proof of Solomon's temple, nobody can prove it was ever built, so on and so forth. We understand this. But to the story, he builds this temple, becomes famous, everybody knows him, and again, nobody outside the Bible mentions this dude, so of course he's just made for the Bible, as we'll get into in a second. So one of the things Solomon does ask God for, that God did like, is that everybody who came from outside of Israel, everybody who came to worship at the temple, because it was supposed to be so magnificent and everybody was hearing stories about it, everybody who comes to the temple, he asks God to basically bless them and forgive them for their sins against him. Now it says here, it's 1 Kings 8, I'll start here at 49. It says, then hear thou their prayer and their supplication in heaven, thy dwelling place, and maintain their cause, and forgive thy people that have sinned against thee, and all their transgressions wherein they have transgressed against thee, and give them compassion before them who carried them captive, that they may have compassion on them. For they be thy people, and thy people inheritance, which thou broughtest forth out of Egypt, from the midst of the furnace of iron, that thine eyes may be open unto the supplication of thy servant, and unto the supplication of thy people Israel, to hearken unto them in all that they call for unto thee. For thou didst separate them from amongst all the people of the earth, to be thy inheritance, as thou spakest by the hand of Moses thy servant, when thou broughtest our fathers out of Egypt, O Lord God. And it was so that when Solomon had made an end of praying all this prayer and supplications unto the Lord, he arose from before the altar of the Lord, from kneeling on his knees, how else do you kneel, with his hands spread up to heaven, and he stood and blessed all the congregation of Israel with a loud voice, saying, Blessed be the Lord that hath given rest unto his people Israel, according to all that he promised, that have not failed one word of all his good promise, which he promised by the hand of Moses his servant. The Lord our God be with us, as he was with our fathers. Let him not leave us nor forsake us. And when you continue reading and you go on reading, it's giving you every single understanding that the people understand who God is and what God has done for them, that they understand the history, they know the power, they have witnessed it, they have seen it. Why would you continue to sin? So you have Solomon getting into all this. Forgive the people, because remember, people scattered, and you got other people who went off and set up kingdoms, other people who went on to other kingdoms that worship other gods and mixed them with them, but they're still supposed to be all from God's people who supposedly was, let out of Egypt. So he's saying, I know they're going against you, but they still your people, even though they were other people. Bless them when they come here, and forgive them and answer their prayers when they come here, because they technically still your people. So gives the prayer. The people acknowledge it, and the temple is built, and they go into the building of King Solomon's temple, which we will not touch on because it's just verse after verse after verse. I mean, they list all kinds of equipment and things that was used to build Solomon's temple. measurements and so on and so forth. It's a bunch of bullshit for something that was never built, plain and simple. So this is what's happening in the beginning of First Kings. So quick recap: Solomon, king now, kills basically everybody from fucking Second Samuel. They dead. He leading a new group of people. They with him. They following him. He's stinking rich. He's famous. Everything is going well with Solomon. Now, the biggest part about this, of course, is the Freemasonry part of this. Who is King Solomon? What does King Solomon have to do with Freemasonry? So, the master builder of the Temple of Solomon was Hiram Abiff, as they call him. Now, what are the things, when you really understand how elaborate King Solomon's temple was supposed to have been, and that we understand that Masons are builders, and that coded within Masonry is the knowledge of the universe, the knowledge of building, math, science, geometry, so on and so forth. For you to build in the way that these people are building goes back to the ancient Egyptians and how they built to mimic, the universe, the stars, the heavens, what was in space. So as above, so below. So all of that is intertwined with Masonry, and Hiram Abiff was a Mason who overseen the building of Solomon's temple, which was supposed to be amazing. So every candidate that enters into the third degree of Freemasonry is told the story of Hiram Abiff, which have many different, stories, different stories. But basically it goes, Hiram Abiff, master builder, was building, and three supposed Masons, they basically, ambushed him and tried to force him to tell the secrets to Masonry, the next level. Give me the master words and tell me the secrets and give me the knowledge of what's going on. And Hiram Abiff stays silent, until death. First man hits him, second man hits him, third man kills him. That's how the story goes. And he dies. And the key to the story, the main point they're trying to make is fidelity. Is keeping the secret under penalty of death, that you can be put right here, right now, on the spot, have your life threatened, and basically be beaten and being in pain and fear, of dying, but yet you don't give up anything. You say nothing. You take death over dishonor. You take death over revealing the secrets. You die to keep the secrets of Masonry. And that's the story of Hiram Abiff and what they try to, give to the Master Masons, to the third degree initiates of Freemasonry. So it's a lot more into that, which we'll touch on at some point. But this is, the story of Hiram Abiff, and it goes into Masonry, and it's a lot dealing with that as well. So what is the whole thing? I mean, we know King Solomon's temple. So what is it? King Solomon's temple was supposed to house the Ark of the Covenant. And that's one of the things we got to beat up first, so you can understand the Ark of the Covenant and what that's about. Because a lot of people, when they dig into Freemasonry, they understand, okay, y'all own King Solomon's temple, Hiram Abiff. What is up with all that? What is the power in it? One, understanding as a Mason, they look at it and say, well, it's the knowledge of, math and all that built into the temple. So it's a lot of esoteric stuff in that. But then religious people look at it and say, well, we're talking about the place where the Ark of the Covenant was housed, where God said himself that he's going to dwell. So what is up with that? The Ark of the Covenant. And when you really get into this thing, you're talking about almost most of the Old Testament we've been reading so far. They carry the Ark of the Covenant. Now, the Ark of the Covenant is supposed to contain the rod of Aaron, supposedly, the tablets, the law of Moses, the laws, and a jar of manna. So we know they're carrying this ark around and giving them powers and all this kind of stuff like that. But we also know 100% for sure they stole the ark from Egypt. The description of the ark fits exactly the reliefs that we see in Egypt that's in stone. Long before anything biblical, we have these arks, which they're called barks, where you understand. You have ark, you have bark. The sacred bark. So when you look at these, and I'm just going to read here so it's more clear to you to understand what this stuff is about. So now it says here, found on Seti I's mortuary temple in Cuma, and the bark of Horus, which, understand real quick, the bark you have sacred bark, and it's ark. It's like a boat, and they carrying it, and you have it covered in gold. Either it's going to be a god inside the bark, or it's going to be a person's remains inside the bark that they use and they carry for basically like a spiritual festival, which we're going to talk about in a second. Now, it says here, and the bark of Horus in the temple of Ifu. Like the Ark of the Covenant, sacred barks were carried on poles by priests, the so-called pure ones, who had performed purification rituals in order to hoist the bark. Though most Egyptian rituals were never witnessed by the public, the procession of the sacred bark was an important exception. It was the focus of an intense series of festivals throughout the year, as many as 5 to 10 per month, which involved loud music and dancing. You see the same thing in China. During the celebration, priests carried the bark from one shrine to another and made stops along the way, during which they dramatized mythological scenes. The route and length of the procession varied depending on the gods they carried and their mythologies. The bark also gave oracles. While resting at one of the stations, it could be consulted by written oracles, and while en route during the procession, it could be asked a question to which it will respond yes or no by bowing fore or aft. Some priests marched before the bark, wafting incense, and others alongside and behind. Some bore standards representing gnomes, much like the tribal procession of the Ark of the Covenant. While I know of no sacred bark whose footstool contained relics. And real quick, the lid that's on the Ark of the Covenant is called the Throne of God, and the box is called the Footstool of God, which you'll understand why in a second. While I know of no sacred bark whose footstool contained relics, the placing of oaths beneath the feet of the statues is attested. Thus, in a letter from Ramses II to the Hittite king Hattusilus III, we find the following reference. The writing of the covenant that I made to the great king, and which the king of Hattu has made with me, lies beneath the feet of the god Ra. The great gods are witnesses to it. Scholars have long linked this practice to the placing of the covenantal tablets in the ark's footstool. You see where they got it from. They stole it from exactly where we know they stole it from, Kemet. And they're trying to make this whole holy connection that had something to do with the tablets and Moses and all this and that, when it has something to do with it's Egyptian. Plain and simple, we all understand this. In addition, from the 18th dynasty well into the Roman period, Egyptians fashioned statues of the god Ptah, Soko, Osiris standing upright on their own coffins. Of interest here is that the coffins often house copies of the Book of the Dead or small corn mummies. While the Ramside letter and statue are not exact parallels to the Ark, they share the concept of text placing beneath the feet of God. Like their divine counterparts, funerary barks function as a means of transport and mythological invocation. However, rather than transport images, they ferry the deceased to their tombs. That's, as I said, was bodies in there. Just like we see in China when there's a funeral, it's the same way. They're carrying these barks, and it's the body that's in there, and you see it's a whole festival. It's the same stuff. They got it from Kemet, and we understand how the cultures mimic each other when we see this stuff, but a lot of people can't point it out because they're not looking. Where do you think we get it from today? If you pay attention to funerals today, we carry the coffins. It's symbolic of what they used to do back in ancient times, carrying a sacred bark with the body in it. We still do that to this day. This is where they got it from. It's clear as day. We carry the pine box, wood, your coffin, pallbearers. It all goes back to ancient times. It all goes back to ancient Kemet, where they stole the whole idea of this from, or where they copied it from. And we see it in ancient China. We see it in China today, and we see it in a lot of funeral processions. And this is where it came from. As in the festivals, loud music accompanied burial processions. These processions too were public, though the number of attendees naturally varied. The bark's trip to the tomb invoked the journey of the sun, important of the sun, as it sailed to the land of the west, like Ra and his solar bark, which is what all of this is about. We'll see in a second. But the deceased hoped to sail on the cycle of renewal, important, and emerge with him at dawn. This is big. And I love when I read stuff like this, and it's clear as day what they're saying. And you got to understand what the stuff is about and what's being said in Solomon, because it's about one thing: the sun. The whole procession, everything that we're reading about this bark has to do with the cycle. It's about reincarnation. You have seen many reliefs of Egyptians on their solar boat, on a boat. When you see the boat with the stars, it's giving you the reference of them traveling through space. That's what it's about. Solar bark, ark, Noah's ark, which was a boat. It's giving you that reference. We see the boats. This is all tied in together, has to do with the sun. Now, of course, we know they got it from Egypt. And the good thing about it is, I talked about this before, Indiana Jones is telling you that clear as day. When you've seen the movie, they never go to Israel. They're looking for the Ark of the Covenant, and they go to Egypt. Where do they find the damn Ark? In Egypt. Not only do they find it in Egypt, they found it encased. Egyptian shit everywhere. Look at the statues. Look at them legs, black. They're giving it to you because I told you they have to tell you the truth. They have to show you what's real. The Ark of the Covenant is nothing more than a bark, the sacred bark from Egypt. Exactly where they found it at on Indiana Jones the movie, and this is where they copied it from. Plain and simple. That's an easy one. But you got to understand what all of this is pertaining to and what Solomon really is. Forget the story. The story is to get you wrapped up in a bunch of mumbo jumbo shit that never happened. But when they tied it to Freemasonry with Hiram Abiff, it's a reason for this, and it's all esoteric. Now remember, the Egyptians dealt with the sun. Plain and simple. Everything is about the sun. Jesus is the sun. You go to church on Sunday, it's sun worship. Jesus is the sun. God is the sun. Everything, and understand this, everything involving Solomon has to do with the sun and the moon. It has to do with reincarnation, birth, sex, so on and so forth. Everything that will be entailed in reincarnation, the cycle of life and death and birth. This is what Solomon is all about. We already know his name, Solomon. And you heard this from Jordan Maxwell. If you follow Jordan Maxwell, he talked about this in one of his previous videos. You have Sol, which is sun. Om, the priest of Om, which has to do with the sun. And On is the city of Heliopolis, which is in Egypt, which is the city of the sun. So Solomon, Solomon's name, has to do with the sun. But then you have Solomon, which has to do with Sol, moon, sun and moon. You have soul of man, Solomon, soul of man, soul of man. It has to do with the soul. Everything involving Solomon has to do with the sun. Plain and simple, there's no way around that. And they're giving that to you when you really understand. Now, Solomon's temple housed the Ark of the Covenant. And as we just talked about, the Egyptians basically had the solar bark, which basically is representing the gods passing to another phase of existence, or a person passing through the procession of the sun, which would be like the procession of reincarnation, them coming back or them moving forward. If there was a god, they was moving forward. If there was a person, they was probably going back through the cycle. So this is what it's about. The Ark of the Covenant, Solomon's temple. So as I said, Solomon also deals with sex, the sex act. So when you look at the blueprints for Solomon's temple, a lot of people pointed this out, including Jordan Maxwell, is you have the phallus going into the woman. So the penis going into the pussy. When you pay attention and look at it, that's what it's showing you. It's a phallic. It's going into the woman's womb. This is what it's about. Has to deal with reincarnation, the sex act. This is why Solomon had so many wives, because they tried to pound that home. Dude had 1,000 girls, 1,000. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines. What you think was going on? Who needs that many? They wanted to pound it home what's really going on and what this stuff is really talking about. It's talking about reincarnation. It's talking about the sex act, and the sex act is the beginning of reincarnation. It is the initiator of what's going to be happening with the energies combining and the process of reincarnation happening, or the process in which a person can come back to this planet via reincarnation, via the body. So go again to Jesus talking to Nicodemus and saying to Nicodemus, hey, only way you can see kingdom of heaven is if you're born again. Born again through the sex acts, born again through the woman's womb, It's clear as day what it's talking about. So Solomon, soul of man, Solomon, sun, sun and moon is what it's talking about. And we're going to dig into that a little bit more as we go. But as I said before, you have to pay attention to when they're giving you stuff. So TV always is telling you stuff clear as day. So remember the show, the TV show, Third Rock from the Sun. What was the main character's name? If you ever seen the show, what was his name? His name was Dick Solomon. That was his name, Dick Solomon. It's giving it to you clear as day. Dick Solomon, Third Rock from the Sun, is giving you sun. That's what it's talking about. Pay attention to the other guy's name. Their last name was Solomon, but their first name had to deal with something, which is another name for a penis, when you really pay attention. All of it, it was so many esoteric episodes in that TV show, people started to catch on, but the show was basically about reincarnation, the sun. His name was Dick Solomon. Come on. They gave it away. But you also have the island of Solomon. It's an island called Solomon, and it's owned by the British. That newspaper is called The Sun. It's the Sun newspaper. And it's so many things that we can point to that's giving you what Solomon really is when you pay attention to it. So this is just a few of them, but it's important to understand that when we get into all this stuff, and in Freemasonry, I don't care what you study in, Freemasonry, Shriners, so on and so forth, the esoteric meaning at its core has to do with the sun, has to do with sex, has to do with energy. So understand that first before you jump into some kind of initiation to some shit that's going to have you messed up. You don't need it. You need to follow your people. Follow what's already yours. Follow your history. Everybody want to jump into these Masonic shit and Shriners, and you don't need this stuff. Follow your people stuff. Follow your history. Everything is right there. This is what they're copying it from. This is where they stole it from. So the Bible, important key to getting to the bottom of a lot of this stuff. So when you're reading it, as I said, it's really important to do so you can figure this stuff out. You're going to pick up stuff like this. So anybody who knew about this stuff, that's on an esoteric level, when they read in First Kings, they're like, well, wait a minute, I know what this is, and you can see it. It's important to know these stories, which is why I go through them so you can get this stuff. So now I'm about to bust up a whole other thing with this King Solomon crap. They used our people's history to basically, create this false nonsense with the Ark of the Covenant. And after doing that, they're also going to use King Solomon and all this other garbage to basically sucker the people of Ethiopia into believing that they have some kind of part in this whole thing. So one of the things that happens, as I said, Solomon becomes famous. And Queen of Sheba, Makede, comes to visit him, and she brings a whole bunch of spices. The Bible says that nobody ever bought spices the like of Queen Sheba, since she left. She bought spices, and she bought a bunch of gold, and she came with a bunch of questions for King Solomon. They exchanged questions and everything like that, and he supposedly answered her questions to her satisfaction. And supposedly he gave her gifts and everything like that, and then she left, and that was the end of it. Now Queen Sheba will be the queen of Ethiopia. Now, talked about before about the Aksum Empire in Ethiopia. You have Rome coming in there, basically them and the Aksumite king converting the people to Christianity. And this is one of the reasons why. It's because of this story. So understand, it's many different stories when it comes to this. So as I just told you, this is what the Bible is basically saying. Sheba, she comes in, asks questions, they exchange gifts, that's it, she leaves. But it's another story that Queen Sheba comes, and the Queen of Sheba comes, Makede, however you want to pronounce her name, and she stays the night. And Solomon supposedly tells her, you can stay, just don't steal shit. Which is crazy. Like, she's going to steal. She came and just bought you a shitload of gold. What is she going to take? So supposedly in the middle of the night, she got thirsty. She goes to get water, and she let me get some water. Now supposedly they have sex, and she has a baby, and that baby, if you know the story, is supposedly Menelik the First. Now, story goes, depending on which one you take, Menelik the First, he goes to Solomon, and he has the ring. Now, I forgot to tell you that part. When Sheba leaves, Solomon gives her a ring, so basically everything's cool, take this ring. So when Menelik comes back, he brings the ring, and he basically says to Solomon, I'm your son. Here's that ring, I'm your son. And Solomon basically doesn't acknowledge him as a son, basically fuck out of here, I ain't your daddy, and so on and so forth. So Menelik, the first, being upset, he gets some of his men, and he goes and he steals the Ark of the Covenant from Solomon. And they bring the Ark of the Covenant into Elephatine, Egypt, but a war breaks out and they eventually bring the Ark back to Ethiopia. So you have people say that they came into the Aksum Empire and suppose they had the Ark of the Covenant, and the only thing that was in it was supposedly wood. They're supposed to be from the original Ark of the Covenant. Because another part of the story goes that Solomon got wind of this and he basically switched the Ark out and put a fake Ark in there. And there's a lot of stories like that to where people was coming and steal an Ark, and Solomon had a fake Ark, and they end up having the fake Ark, which is why you have so many different civilizations talking about they had the Ark of the Covenant, but it's all bullshit. But 1 Kings 10:13 says this, and King Solomon gave unto the Queen of Sheba all her desire whatsoever she asked, beside that which Solomon gave her of his royal bounty. So she turned and went on her own country, she and her servants. And that's it. That's the end of it. But you have this story, supposedly she had sex with Solomon, but there never was a Solomon. We know it was a queen of Ethiopia, whatever you want to call her. And we know about Menelik the First. But you have most of the royal people that's in Ethiopia, the religious ones attest their bloodline from being from Solomon. Meaning they share the same bloodline with David, with Jesus. So this is one of the reasons why a lot of them are Christians. And it's not a coincidence that you have the Ethiopian Bible and Abba coming there using a Greek manuscript, creating the Ethiopian Bible. But all of this is intertwined with Solomon and Haile Selassie, who claims that he is a descendant of King Solomon. So that would make Haile Selassie a descendant of Jesus Christ, and so on and so forth, which is why a lot of people follow him as well. And you have the Rastafarian movement intertwined with Solomon, but really, when you understand esoterically, it's intertwined with Masonry, and they're using it to bring people into the fold, not knowing that it's all Masonry. You can talk all the stuff you want, we're going to let you talk this stuff. You can be Rastafari out. Really, it's Masonry, it's Christian, it's the white man, it's they shit. So all y'all walking around with this Rastafarian crap and believing that y'all indulging in something that y'all took from them and tried to make, because they're trying to make it conscious now. So the Rastafarian thing goes conscious, and it's about consciousness because of dreadlocks. No, the shit goes back to the Bible and King Solomon. Let that shit go. Stop following people's stuff that is not yours. Follow your people's. This is where they stole it from. Everybody want to jump on a bandwagon of a religion or some kind of group. Just follow your people. Plain and simple. It's our shit they stole it from. You got to know the history of it and how it came about. And this is how it came about. It has nothing to do with no Solomon. Solomon never existed. His temple never existed. The ark never existed. It's all bullshit. It's a story. Plain and simple. But now, let's get back into the story, because the story is also giving you all this I'm talking about. So, we understand. Listen, by chapter 11, Solomon is done. So, the first 10 chapters is about Solomon and what he was doing. It's a bunch of bullshit, as I just said. But by chapter 11, he's done. The dude got 1,000 people he fucking. And the problem is, the women he's taking in is from other tribes, from other countries. They don't follow the same God. They don't share the same ideology. So I read to you, Solomon, praying to God. Remember that prayer he prayed. He talked to the people. I read it. And he said so much stuff. David, his dad told him, don't do this, don't do that. God came to you in the dream, answered your wishes. What's going on? How could you go against him? So now it's saying here, and this is 1 Kings chapter 11, 1. Start reading from here. It says, but King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh. So he got the daughter of Pharaoh too. It's just bullshit. Women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites, of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, ye shall not go into them, neither shall they come in unto you. But we know they was already doing that, so I don't understand what he's mad about. Remember, they've been mixing in. The Israelites been mixing in with these people. So it's like, okay, when they mix in, is they done? Remember, but a bunch of Israelites came back. So what's going on? But it's never contradiction. For surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave unto these in love. And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For it came to pass when Solomon was old that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, and as was the heart of David his father. For Solomon went after Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians, which Ashtaroth is the moon, which I said to you before, Solomon has to do with the sun and the moon. They're giving you that here. And after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites, which the Ammonites, their lineage begins with the mixing of the son and daughter of Lot. Remember, one of the daughters that wanted to, I said this before, one of the daughters that wanted to rape the dad or get him drunk, have sex with him, basically had sex with her brother and created the Ammonites. And Milcom is basically a god of child sacrifice. And Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord and went not fully after the Lord as did David his father. Then did Solomon build a high place for Shamash, which is basically another name for Molech, the abomination of Moab, and the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech the abomination of the children of Ammon. It's the same stuff when you get into it. And likewise did he for his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrificed unto their gods. And the Lord was angry with Solomon, because his heart was turned from the Lord God of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice in a dream. Remember that. So again, what the fuck is wrong with these people? it's come on. Like, after all this, how? The dude done gave he the richest man supposedly ever, according to how they want to blow it up. Oh, Solomon was the richest. Nobody had more riches than Solomon, so on and so forth. You got 1,000 women who God seemed to have let that slide. Even if it was 1,000 women that wasn't from other nations, one, God didn't care. It was just like, okay, I don't care you fucking these other girls, just don't let them turn your heart away from me. So you got money, you got girls, you got whatever you want back then. What's the problem? What's the issue when you understand the power of God and what he's done for you? You pray to him, you know what's going on. How could he turn away from him? So God is pissed once again. Somebody he's put in charge and gave him everything they could possibly want, sins and goes crazy and goes against God. So God tells he tells Solomon that I'm going to rip your kingdom away from you. But it's not going to happen till you're dead. When you die, your kingdom is going to be torn into shreds. He says, I'll leave one tribe with your son. The rest will be scattered. So God begins to send enemies unto the kingdom. And you have the downfall. It's the beginning of the downfall of the kingdom. So it's not going to completely happen until Solomon's dead, but it's the beginning of the downfall. So you have God sends in Hadad. Now, Hadad, if you remember, we go back to King David. David and Joab goes into Edom, where Hadad is an Edomite. They go into Edom, basically, kills everybody. So he says, all the males got to go. Kill all the males, kill them all. And Hadad was small and young, so he ran away with the servants, and he actually got away while everybody else was being slaughtered. So Edom actually runs to Egypt. Now, while in Egypt, the Pharaoh basically takes in Hadad. He gives him a place to live, and when he gets older, he actually gives him his sister-in-law to marry. So Hadad is, he living good over there in Egypt. So Hadad eventually gets word that David and Joab is dead. So he want to go home. Well, the Pharaoh doesn't want him to go, but he's like, he understands, so he lets him go. Now, that's one of the enemies Solomon has, of course, because when he gets back, he's like, he don't want to deal with Solomon. But Solomon also has to deal with Rezon and Jeroboam. Now, Jeroboam, major player in this thing, Jeroboam actually works for Solomon. Now, Jeroboam is out there working, and a prophet comes to him and basically says that he basically rips his clothes in pieces and tells him, pick up 10. Those 10 is going to represent the 10 tribes of Israel that he's going to have control over. So Solomon hears the prophecy that Jeroboam is going to have a whole bunch of my tribes. So Jeroboam flees. He runs away. He's like, I'm out of here, because he knows that Solomon's going to kill him. So he flees. But, understand, he's getting this because, of Solomon's sin and everything he did against God. So it's what's supposed to happen. So Jeroboam's gone until Solomon dies. So Solomon dies. Jeroboam comes back. Rehoboam, who is Solomon's son, becomes king. And I guess they wanted their names to rhyme to make it more easier to understand, because I don't know who's the guy or who had the job of coming up with the dickhead, stupid biblical names, because the names is retarded. Some dude had to sit there and come up with all these stupid ass names, and I guess they wanted them to make some kind of sense. But the names just piss you off when you read the Bible. It frustrates you because they're stupid. But Jeroboam, Rehoboam, so on and so forth. That's the name. So you have Jeroboam going against Rehoboam, however you want to pronounce that, Rehoboam, whatever. So Jeroboam comes back and he says to Rehoboam, okay, listen, I know what happened or whatever, but I will basically follow you. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. Me and my people will follow you as long as you be like David, as long as you be just and cool, as long as you be a good guy. Don't be like Solomon. Don't have taxes and all that kind of stuff like that. So that's basically what he says. And this is a simple, easy request that he says to Rehoboam. Just be cool, everything will be straight. Now, somebody's asking you to be good and be a just, righteous person the way you're supposed to be. Do what you are supposed to do. And you got to think about it. So, Rehoboam is like, let me think about this shit. Let me go seek counsel, because you asked me to be good. I can't do that. So he goes and seeks his elder counsel and asks him, what should I do? And they're like, hey, you should be good. Be nice to the people, be kind to the people, but it just don't sit right with this evil motherfucker, because he's evil and they all evil. So what he does is he goes and asks the younger of his advisors, the younger advisors. And they tell him, man, listen, do what you want to do, forget these people, so on and so forth. So Rehoboam basically raises taxes, and he sent people out to go and collect taxes, and they basically stoned the dude to death that's trying to collect the taxes. And then Rehoboam started to realize that, what I'm doing is crazy. Let me chill out for a second. I don't want a bunch of stuff to happen. So he starts to calm down. Meanwhile, Jeroboam is basically looked at, and people are thinking to themselves, hey, wait a minute, ain't Jeroboam supposed to have, be in control or something like that? Let's make Jeroboam king. So Jeroboam is made king by the people. The people favor him more than Rehoboam, who is the rightful king. But as we said, the prophecy says it's going to be ripped away from his people. But Rehoboam basically gathers like 180,000 man army, get ready to go and attack Jeroboam. And then God basically tells him, hey, this is how it's supposed to be, chill out. And he says, okay, he chills out. Now the thing is, they basically split the kingdom 50-50. Problem is, Jeroboam is like, well, wait a minute. This dude has Jerusalem. He has the place where all the holy temples is. He has the place where you have the priests have a bunch of temples, and everybody is coming there to worship. So he figured, like, you know what? Jeroboam and Rehoboam has the people's soul. He has control of the doctrine. He has control of the churches. So the people are going to appeal more to him, because they're coming in there to coming to him, to where he's at, to give, spiritual unity and so on and so forth, spiritual energy. So he's going to have the people's heart more than Jeroboam. So Jeroboam's like, I got to figure something out. So what he does is he creates these bull statues, and he tricks the people, and he tells them, hey, these are the gods that help bring your people out of Egypt, so you should worship them. And then he basically makes a bunch of people priests and tell them to go and build temples to have people come and worship. So you have people under Jeroboam coming to these bull statues and worshiping here and worshiping on these altars that goes to other gods and not, the real God. So this is what he does. And of course, we know that's going to backfire. So what happens is you have a prophet. He comes to one of the altars of Jeroboam, the fake altar, and he starts talking to it. And he says to the altar that a kid named Josiah is basically going to grow in power, and he's going to sacrifice people on top of you. Talking to the altar. He's going to sacrifice animals, and he's going to sacrifice people on top of this altar right here. So Jeroboam hears it, and he basically, like, what the hell are you doing? He goes to kick the man out, and he grabs the man. And when he grabs the man, his hand withers, turns like real old. And he's like, what the hell? So the prophet basically saying, this is what God told me to do. So, Jeroboam begs him. He say, please pray with me for God to fix my hand and heal my hand back. So they pray, his hand heals back. And he invites the prophet in to eat and drink with him, talk with him. But the prophet's like, no, I got specific orders. God told me, come here, speak to the altar, say what I got to say, and then go straight home. He told me, do not eat or drink of this house because y'all basically doomed. So I'm getting the hell out of here, going home. So that's what he does. He leaves. But you have another elder man who overheard the whole conversation. And he goes to the prophet and he says to him, well, I'm a prophet as well. So once you come back and eat with me and drink with me, I'm a prophet too. And the man's like, no, I'm not supposed to. But he's like, I'm a prophet too. You cool. So goes back. So he's there eating and drinking, and he hears the voice, angel or the Lord in his head, basically said, motherfucker, I told you not to eat and drink here. You doomed. You're going to die before you get home. So he's like, I'm out of here. So on his way home, he get freaking killed by a lion. That lion comes out, kills this dude because of what he did. So the old man who basically invited him in, the other prophet, invited him to come eat. He hears about it. He goes out there and takes his body and buries it. And that's what happens to the guy. I mean, the Bible is full of crazy stories when you really read it. So even after all this, Jeroboam knows what happens. Even after everything that just happened to him, even after he touched the dude, hand withered up, they prayed, he came back. The whole prophecy, so on and so forth. Jeroboam still goes on having the people worship false idols, and he himself is worshiping false idols, which is crazy. So Jeroboam, he has a child, and the baby becomes sick. So he tells his wife to disguise herself and go to one of the prophets and try to find out what's going to happen to the baby, what's wrong with the baby. So she disguised herself to go to the prophet to ask him questions of what's going on. And before she even get there, God basically say like, hey, Jeroboam's wife, she's coming there. She's going to try to, disguise herself to act like she's somebody else. But you know who she is. Basically tell her that they screwed. So she goes there and the prophet says to her that, dude, for everything your husband did, all the evil y'all worshiping false idols, all the children of your house is going to be destroyed. Plain and simple. So as soon as she stepped foot out of there, the baby gets sick and dies, when she leaves. So the baby dies. And that's basically what's going to happen to the line of Jeroboam. So you would think, he would just repent and forgive me, but the dude doesn't. God tells Jeroboam that all your descendants that die in the city will be eaten by dogs, and all of your descendants that die in the wilderness or dies in the field will be eaten by birds. So, damn. So God tells them, people are going to be scattered, and you're going to be screwed. So basically, Jeroboam rules for about 22 years, and Nadab takes the throne after him, his son. And then you have Rehoboam, who basically rules for about, I think, like 17 years. He dies, and you have Abijam take the throne after him. The same thing keep happening over and over again. New king, sin, destruction, so on and so forth. So Abijam is basically evil, just like Rehoboam. And, he basically dies, and his son Asa takes over. Now, Asa is different. Asa basically cleans house. Same thing like what Solomon did. He cleans house. The people at this time, before he became king, got prostitution going on. They're worshiping false gods. Then Asa comes in, cleans house, get rid of all the false priests and get rid of everything, and starts living righteous again. Same stuff we can see that happen with David. It's the same process over and over again, where you have evil, somebody good comes in and they do evil, and then it's the same process. So Asa comes in and he's good, and he's basically getting people on the straight path. Now, Jeroboam, son Nadab, is evil just like his dad as well, and he's basically, he goes to war against Baasha. And Baasha basically kills Nadab, so that's the end of Nadab. Now, Baasha is not from their line; he's just somebody who they was fighting. But Baasha, of course, as he kills him, he takes over the kingdom. And Baasha basically wipes out the entire line of Jeroboam, just like the prophecy said that everybody's going to be wiped out. So Baasha, when he becomes king, he kills all of them, kills all his entire line, wipes them all out. And now Baasha is ruling Judah. And you have Asa ruling Jerusalem or the rest of Israel. And these two guys clash, of course. They go to war against each other. And Asa beats Baasha. And then that's the end of Baasha. And then you have Asa basically ruling. So Asa was good. He was just. He beat out, a bad king and kept him from basically corrupting the people even further. And for his trouble, he gets some kind of foot disease, and that's how he died. That's what happened to the dude. Good, right, just. All these other kings come and they bad, they evil. Asa comes, he's good, kicks out prostitution, kicks out the false priests. He's doing good, getting the people on the straight and narrow. He don't get a bunch of money like Solomon did. He don't get a bunch of stuff, wives and everything like that. He gets a foot disease and he dies. That's what you get following this damn stupid God. Foot disease and the dude is dead. So that's the end of him. And you have Jehoshaphat, who comes and is now ruling. Now, long story short, eventually Jehoshaphat's done with, and Ahab takes the throne. And Ahab, as we know, marries Jezebel. Jezebel is an idolatress, and she worships many idols. And of course, this is what happens. She completely turns the entire Israel onto Baal. Everybody's worshiping Baal. It's Baal worship everywhere, and this is what's going on. So God sends Elijah. Just like he did when he sent Saul, just like he did when he sent David. God again sees the evil of the people and what they don't. He sends somebody in to save them, and this is how it's supposed to go. So he sends in Elijah, and you have everybody worshiping Baal. They're going crazy over Baal. Jezebel peeps game, and she can't stand under the prophets. She's like, every time these prophets prophesy some shit, it come true. So I'm killing all these prophets, and that's like her thing, to just wipe out all the prophets. So nobody's giving prophecy, so she ain't got to worry about nothing. So that's her thing. But Elijah comes. She don't like him, of course. Elijah basically tells Ahab, come to Mount Carmel, bring about 800 of your priests, and we're going to settle this who got the real God thing. So it's 2 bulls, and he says, command your God to set this bull on fire. It don't happen, of course. So Elijah takes water. He pours water on his bull, and God sets it on fire. So the people are like, oh, okay. And then they basically kill all the priests that's there, wipes them all out, except for Ahab. And Elijah tells Ahab that your house is going to fall, that you're basically doomed, dude. So, you would think he would be on the right path and get straight, but he doesn't. He doesn't. He goes into war. He's killed during war. And dogs lick up his blood, just like the prophecy said. So that's what happens to Ahab, and Uzziah becomes king. Now, Jehoshaphat wasn't that bad, but Jehoshaphat dies, and Jeroboam becomes king. So again, we have this whole dual king thing, and that's basically how First King ends with this whole thing. But we have, again, same type of story. It's the same thing over and over again, and it's going to be fun to see what happens and how this thing shapes out. But we see, since the people left, they've been sinning continually. God has been delivering them, sending people, delivering them, killing them, so on and so forth. King comes in, good, does the right thing, sins. It's human nature. I mean, some of the stuff is just like real simple stuff. I mean, but it's going against the established commandments of God, and God is wiping them out because they're disobeying. So there's a lot into these stories. A lot of people need to understand when getting into the Bible and digging into these stories. They're geared towards the message that they want you to understand. And if you're a Christian, just think about it. If you're a Christian, you're trying to get the understanding of what God wants you to do and how he wants you to live. These stories are giving you the information that you are not perfect, that you can't be perfect, and that normal stuff is going to turn you away from God, but you got to fight it. And you got to ask yourself, if these people who are super righteous and super holy, who actually witnessed the power of God and spoke to God and heard his voice and so on and so forth, if these people can have that and still sin, what's going to happen to me? So it's giving you the understanding that it's impossible, and it's the point. That's what you have to get out of it esoterically. These other Christians just running around acting like they just all good. They acting. They went around like they better than Solomon and Daniel and so on and so forth, and they could just not sin at all, and they living their life right. Whereas these people was outright sinning, knowing God gonna see the shit. These people acting like they not sinning, they shit don't stink, and so on and so forth. So even as a Christian, if you read this, and you read the fact that one, nobody knew what David did with Bathsheba and what happened with Uriah, except for him and Joab, for real. But God knew. And if you're reading that, you know, as a Christian, that when you sin, God knows. So if you believe in this God and believe that he's real, then you should understand that if you're sinning, then God is going to know that you're sinning and you're going to get punished for it, you know, some way, shape, or form. But you have the rest of the story about David when they fall to their face. You know, David basically apologizes and I'm sorry and this and that. And other people are going to look at that and say that, well, I could just do what David did. I could just repent and God's going to forgive me like he did David. And as I said in the beginning, this is the scapegoat for the people. It's the scapegoat for them to believe that they can do unbelievable, outrageous stuff against the Bible and just repent and it's all going to be forgiven. And when we get into Hebrews 10:26, it says, if you go on sinning willfully after receiving knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins. Because remember, all of this shifts over. Everything's completely different once Jesus comes about. The rules are changed. They can use these excuses, but it doesn't fit once Jesus came. And this is what I convey to people when they try to kick that nonsense that they could just repent. That's not what the Bible says. You ain't King David, you ain't Solomon. It's different rules to this that you're supposed to be following, but you're not because you ain't even reading the book. But we got to understand, of course, it's esoteric. This whole book of First Kings, understanding the parable about Solomon and Hiram Abiff and Solomon's temple, so on and so forth. It's esoteric. It's the hidden code of the Bible that Masons are supposed to get, which is why they have this book. The fact that this book exists tells you everything, man. It tells you everything. So when people get into Masonry, when people start talking about it, the first thing they think about when they think about Masons is people that's controlling the world, that's evil. Then you have other people who try to link it with some kind of satanic cult or so on and so forth. These people got a freaking Bible, and it's just like your King James Version. So what is they about? These people, you see Masons, they're talking about God. Plain and simple. So you have to pick one religion in Freemasonry: Christianity, Judaism, Islam. You got to follow one of these. So this is what they follow. And you have, as I talked about before, with Shriners and with the Moors, them worshiping, basically the hidden meaning of Islam when you really get into it. This is what it's about. But if they have this book, why would you think that they're evil but not think this book is, or accept this book as being something good that you should be following? You should be digging more into it. As I said, best place to hide something is in plain sight. This is where they hid their secrets, as I talked about before. It's coded. And when you understand that, you understand why this book exists. One of the reasons why it's hard for a lot of people to get into the Bible, which is, again, one of the reasons why I decided to do this whole Biblical Bible series, is because, you read it. It's hard to follow. It's tough to really get in with all the contradictions and understanding what the book is talking about. It gets boring. It's a lot of interesting stories in the Bible that we can find in movies. And when you understand esoteric studies and the esoteric jargon, you see it in the Bible. I mean, it's clear as day. Freemasonry is in there. A lot of these mystery schools teachings come from there and can be traced back to Kemet. So it's definitely a book you must understand it. And I guarantee the points, the parts I'm pointing out, in the Bible, the books that I'm reading, the verses that I go through, is for those reasons. Don't get caught up in the story. As I said, you're going to read it, you're going to get caught up in the story, and it's going to leave you lost. There's a lot of stuff that I leave out that we'll go back to for important reasons. But for the most part, this is what it is. The parts that I'm talking about, the parts you need to know, need to understand, and it's going to come together to reveal something that a lot of people have no clue about, but it's big, and it's just the tip of the iceberg for understanding esoteric studies and what's really going on with this planet. It's in this book, and they put it in there, and it's going to blow people's mind, when they really get it, but a lot of people won't. A lot of people are not going to understand it. It's kind of tough to put in words. I mean, you're going to have to see it. You're going to have to just feel it and know. Most of you will, a lot of you won't. But it's important. This is the key to putting all this stuff together and transcending this place And again, this is important, man. Knowledge is so important because you're coding yourself. This is what you're doing. You're programming yourself. You're coding your consciousness to understand stuff and pick up stuff, and letting your subconscious know that basically, I mean, just look at it like a game of memory. On a flat surface, you have all the cards, right? And let's say you've seen them. You know, all the cards are laying flat. You've seen them. You know what they are. But you have to remember that. You have the cards in your hand. You've seen everything already. Now you have to match it up. Now you have to remember that this king was in this position. This ace was in that position. So on and so forth. And once you match it up, everyone, king for king, queen for king, ace for ace, the game was over. You win. You can't win until you do that. And it's basically like what your subconscious is. It's playing a game. Kind of, sort of. And it's like, okay, yeah, I know I'm a king here. Can you match me? And when you match it, we're equal now. Let's move on to the next one. So on and so forth. So your subconscious wants you to match it, to understand what it understands, so it can be on the same level as you. It's that unity. It's that oneness. You understand? It's the yin and the yang. Subconsciousness, consciousness. One. You get it? So it's giving you this information. You have to get it. You already know it. It's in you. But you have to get it consciously and bring it to your subconscious and say, we match this card. Let's move on to the next one. So on and so forth. So it's hard to get people to understand the value and importance of information and knowledge. It's everything. It's all the Bible's telling you. All this shit got to do with knowledge. Sun, moon, energy. It's the same stuff. Knowledge is the key to it all. So for those people who chose to invest in their, education into learning, you can't find smarter people than these people. It's the key to everything. As I said, you can't build a computer if you don't know how to. You can't become successful if you don't know how to. You can't transcend this reality and move on to the next stage of existence if you don't know how to. You understand? But the keys is already in you. They locked. The doors is there. You got to unlock them. The only way to do it is with knowledge. As I say on my Instagram, the keys is here. It's the master key right here. It's this book. It's the Bible. And I can't say it enough. Like, it's just a genius book, man. I don't know how he did it, who did it, the kind of brain it would take to do this, because I haven't revealed to you guys what this, like, this is everything right here, and it's free, and it's crazy, but it's in accordance with universal law. The rulers, I'm going to make sure, guess what, 501c3, you can have tax exempt status. You don't have to worry about paying no taxes if you push in this book. I'm going to push this book. I'm going to create societies, and we're going to give this book away for free. You can walk into any church and walk out with a Bible free. Some places sell Bibles, but you go to a church, they give you a Bible. It's all here. This is it. This is it. This is basically right here, universal law. So they're giving you everything esoterically that your subconscious can decode, but you have to get on the same par as your subconscious to decode it. But they gave it to you. It's right here. There it is. Now, the difference between this book and yours is the layout. And you won't know this unless you go look. The way, it says the same stuff. It's the way it's laid out. If I compare it to another book, this is down here. It might not be down here on your Bible. You understand? Or it might not be down here in one of these different pages. You get what I'm saying? And that's how it's coded out. It's something we'll get into later. But they gave it to you. Universal law, everything's coded. On the forefront for us consciously, we can say, well, that's cheating. It's all in code. I can't understand it. But nah, your subconscious can decode the whole damn thing if you read it. So they did give it to you. It's not, their fault that you're not going to take the time to decode. So in essence, they gave you truth. They gave you all the keys, everything you need to know. Universal law is approving of what they have done for us. We have to decipher. We have to use our energy and decode the shit and understand what it's really talking about. And people just not doing that. So we can go through the entire book, which we will. And we'll go through, of course, it's going to be so much fun to go through the Torah and compare it and see the difference. And we're going to go through the Quran and do all 3 books because I have to. And then we're going to completely, put that into the Egyptian studies and go through that, as well as Buddhism, of course. So you can get this universal understanding of what they're trying to convey and see the bigger picture that I have seen so many times now in studying this stuff. And, sometimes to me, it's like, what's next? It's the end. Because I feel like I've been to that point where, I know where I'm going. I know what's next. But you got to deal with life. You got to deal with this physical reality and everything that's in it. Master the material. But at the same time, my purpose here is to teach. Is to help you guys get to where I am and to not get stuck back here. Escape the wheel of reincarnation. Some will, some won't. Majority will not, because they bullshit. And it don't matter what you do. It don't matter, how much information you put into this stuff, how much knowledge you get out of it, I should say. It's how you apply it. It's what you do with it once you get it. And you have some people that's using it to control, manipulate, and not put it in them, and not think about the energy that you receive, putting it into others. Because then now, as a teacher, or as a person that's freeing the mind, freeing the consciousness, a consciousness liberator, as I always like to say. There's energy in that. It's power in that. It's a lot that you get from having many different minds gather knowledge from you. And in that process, you help people. But for the most part, YouTube is full now with so many people doing what I do. And I get a lot of questions from many people as to what is what and what should I follow, what should I read, where to start, which is why I have a video coming up on where to start, where to begin. I talked about this before, but not in detail as I'm going to do for this video, because people need to know. And it's a mindset you have to have going into this. And today it's like people worried about a bunch of bullshit. People still worry about homosexuality. People worried about TV and stupid shit. People still worried about black and white, which is understandable. But it's nothing compared to the overall picture. You have to understand what has been put here for you to be where you need to be at. And in the DVD I got coming up after this one, which is Darkness and Light, it's going to connect a lot of dots. But yeah, in 1 Kings. Next will be in 2 Kings in this series. But the next DVD is Dark and Light coming out, which is, energy and consciousness, the original superpowers. And definitely check it out. It's going to be a good video. But I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch and purchase and support and being in on this whole series. There's a lot more to come, of course, as we just scratching the surface. We're still in the Old Testament. A lot more to come. It's going to get deeper and deeper, and we'll come back and visit a lot of these verses and books that we touched on. But it's a lot to come. So thank you guys again. See you guys next video. And I appreciate the support. And make sure you become a member of Merkaba Academy, paid or non-paid. Become a member and get those and be able to see what I'm posting up there. Because as I said, there's going to be videos I post that I can't post on YouTube. So I'm going to post on Merkaba Academy. So definitely make sure you're able to see them. So thanks again. See you next video.